じゃあ午後の部始めますね。それで英語の世界から学ぶ夢と希望のアフリカの民主主義で、前回生さんが来た時にやったんですけど、もう一回、高橋初めてなんでちょっと説明しますけど。先週土曜日ね。で、731部隊も、日本は自虐士官でね、悪いことしたって言ってるけど、そうじゃなくて、やっぱり、原爆に対して最近どうやってやって、アメリカ戦うかっていうことで731部隊があったんですね。で、結局日本軍の立派なところは、残ってませんけど、天皇陛下はね、原爆と違って最近も同じ威力があるんで、でも使うなと。いうことで、無条件交付したんですね。だから日本人が731部隊に対して非常に立派な声を取ったんで、若さが日本を尊敬したっていうのは僕は絶対あると思うんですね。バタン市の行進は、これはマニラでね、アメリカ軍が炎天下歩かされていっぱい死んだんですけど、この時もやっぱりフィリピン人もいっぱい歩いたんですね。でも彼らは知らなかった。フィリピン人は炎天下歩くの普通なんで知らなかった。戦後も問題にならなかったね。慰安婦は問題になったんですね。慰安婦は、フィリピンはやっぱり、占領してたんでね。そうは言ってもやっぱり韓国ほどじゃないですけどね。対面鉄道、これはイギリス人の捕虜7万人にね、シンガポールからタイ連れてって強制労働させてる。これも20万人以上現地の人を雇ってね、やったんで、戦後現地の人は一切問題ないんだ。なぜかって言ったら、現地の人の生活のレベルだったんですね。で、イギリスもアメリカも軍隊いい生活してたんですよ。だから、これいろいろ調べて思ったのは、日本が戦争できるようなレベルじゃなかったなっていうのをつくづく感じたんですね。要するに、彼らの軍隊の生活のレベルは全然はるかに日本よりいい生活を、いいものを食べて、いい生活をしてたんですね。日本は現地の人と同じようなレベルの生活をしてた。だから、アジアの人が日本を尊敬するのは、彼らのレベルで貧しいながらもアメリカに戦ったっていうことで、日本人を尊敬してたんだなっていうのは、これ書いてて思ったんですね。シンガポール大学祭でこれはもう1も2も3も日本があるんですね。これはあれです、大本営のなんだっけね、大本営の駐車でね、辻正信。この指示で7万人ぐらい殺したんですね。家計をね、無条件に。リー・コアニーに殺され損なったって言ってましたね。それがこの案件ですね。これタイトルはね、今違うんですよね。なんだっけな、これタイトル変えたんですよね。なんかね、あれこれだ。これだ。違う。これダメだね。タイトル変えたんです。新着。これだ。あれ英語の表紙変わってないな。こうやって変えたんです。こいつは。これタイプ、あれ写真変えなかったかな。変わってないよね。 うん。これをね、変わったんですよ。ちょっと待ってね。これね、日本の出版、最近大学です。ほら、変わってないんだよ。昔のスマップの、日本の出版、再提出。こうやって本出版するんだよ。これだ。これで、コンテンツ編集。これ忘れてるな、ちょっとな。原稿でしょ。これだ。あれなってるよね。ねえ。あれ直ってないよね。まあ、なんで直ってないの？どこにデスクトップ。どこにデスクトップ。出版で。人気の大学生。これだ。これで。これで表紙を取り替えられたの。うん。原稿もこう同じようにして、もうこの、アマゾンはすぐできるの。他のやつはね、いろいろ変換してやらないとできないんで、最近はもう、アマゾンしか出してないの。めんどくさいから。 じゃあ続きやりましょう。で、タイトルはこうやって変えたんですね。で、実際軟禁だけじゃないんで。あともう一つは慰安婦の本で、これも日本政府が嘘ばっかり書いて。慰安婦はテーマでかいんでね。で僕この二つがね、日本の歴史でね、どうしても、本書きたかった。外国人に対してね、日本人が悪いって。で、前者の方は日本人が悪かった。もっと悪かった。で、悪かったっていうより、一作の方は僕は、日本人のその、心の狭さ、軟禁って言ってて、もっと、本当はもうやっぱり人は殺したいの。上海から南はね、食料自給しなさいってことは、みんな殺せって言ってでしょ。そうしたの。それを毛沢東は、日本が大事だから、ね、軟禁だけにしようって、そういうふうにしたんだと思うんですよ。30万人って言っときゃさ、100年ぐらい騒ぐだろう。ね、そう言っておけば。毛沢東すごいな。これ、慰安婦は、韓国人の心の狭さと、日本人の自虐史観、自信のなさ、それの、たまたま重なってうまいわけになっちゃった。だから、全くの嘘だね。これはね。ただ、ちゃんと調べたんだけど、韓国人言ってるのそうなんだけど、1910年の日韓併合は、植民地でどこもそうだけど、朝鮮人から土地を取り上げたわけですよ。ね。で、日本の農民を移民させたんですよ。ということ、どういうことかっていうと、植民地主義はどこの国もそうなんだけど、農民は小作人になったわけですよ。ということはどういうことかっていうと、妻子を養えなくなっちゃった。結果としてはね、妻とか娘を女郎屋に売っちゃったんです。土地取られたのは 35% ぐらいだけど、その人たちは、みんな妻と子供、娘を女郎屋に売ったんですよ。軍隊じゃない、強制連行じゃない。で、原因は日本が作ったんで、日本が悪いんだけど、正しく言えばそういうことだね。結果一緒だけど。だから、慰謝料払えって言えば、それは払うのは正しいんだけど。でも理由は違う。日本も東北の金時がね、娘を売り飛ばしたでしょ？問題だよ。だからこれは日本人が作り出したね、植民地だからね、しょうがない。ただ、台湾はないんだよね、そういうのね。台湾はないんだ。だから、統治者のマネジメントスタイルかな。で、朝鮮の方が早かったからね、台湾より。経験もなかったし。むちゃくちゃしたってした。ただそれを、僕なりにね、正確に歴史を伝えたかった。正確に伝えて、上も下も日本が悪いことしたんだけど、世間で言われているような悪いことをした仕方じゃないんだ。これやっぱりちゃんと正しくね、日本の歴史を世界に伝えなきゃいけない。で、僕は英語で説明できるような資料を作った。で、誰も読まないけど、でも、これしかないんだ。ね。だからそのうち何年かしたらさ、5年か10年かわかんないしたら、僕の指導をね、こういうのあったなって。10年先かもしれないし。ね。で、書いた。この一冊だけ。それ以外日本の歴史で海外に修正するっていうのは、何があるかっていうとね、 日本人とはどういう民族かっていうのはない。ね。それはね、日本の民主主義も含めて書かなきゃいけない。ね。それを書こうと思って、今年ね、民主主義終わってから。民主主義終わってからね。で、これは、3月に、ここの見出しがね、4月にアクセンチを変えて、これは5月、6月か。4月からね、第3冊目で民主主義やったのね。で、初めはね、これ、全部で9冊なんですよ。今回その4冊目。アフリカだからね。アフリカは3冊あって、4、5、6。で、南アメリカ、南北アメリカ、西ヨーロッパ、9冊 ?4 冊目。5、6。南アメリカ。7。南北、それから8。西ヨーロッパ、東ヨーロッパ。まあ、9冊って書いてあるけど、多分、アメリカ、南北アメリカ1冊は収まらないから。まあ、10冊だ。だから、1冊目は世界のレゴの姿はまだ民主主義で。これは、民主主義の歴史と様々な政治形態、ギリシャとかローマ、ギリシャの民主主義とローマ民主主義と違うかとかね。そういうのを説明して。民主主義と何か、アメリカが加藤政治だとかね、それからロシアはどうだとかっていろいろ、世界の政治いろいろ言って、で、アメリカの政治もね、トランプのそういうね、選挙もね、ロシアにインタラクされたよとか、で、今後どういう民主主義になるべきかっていうことで、熟民主義って言ってるんだけど、熟民主義ってのは要するに、市民が討議してそれを政府にこうしなさいってリコメンデーションするやつね。で、日本の民主主義の話もしてる。日本はここで日本言ってるのね。この時はだから、日本が素晴らしいよと分からなかった。まだ。どんどんやっていく中で日本の民主主義素晴らしい。まあ、儒教、神道、仏教、それから武士道、科学で、こういうのをミックスした、民主主義って日本しかない。元は中国だけど、中国はみんな勉強してるけど、その通りでやらないんじゃないですか。日本語なんか知ってて。2冊目が、北アジアと東南アジア。で、これはもう1も2も3も ICT 革命ね。だから中国だとか、民主主義だとかっていうよりも、ともかく ICT 革命が、この東南アジアはもうドミナント。政治体制以上に。今それでもって、経済社会が変化するっていう。ただ残念なことに日本が保守的なんで、ICT に対してね、取り残されちゃうよって書いてある。中国はもう2030年ビジョンでEV、ICT で追うんだよ。インド、フィリピンが追ってる。日本はもう全然、AI とロボット技術は先端的だけど、要するに総合力とか、長期戦略っていうのは全くないから。まあ日本は技術だけだよね、そういうことを書いてある。で、3冊目はね、これが南アジア。だから、バングラデシュとかインドとか、ブータンとか、中東ね。で、これは今やってるんだよね。水曜日やってる。まともな国家はインドでイスラエルって言ってるけど、インドも汚職と腐敗で、7つの州がバラバラで労働法が全然治らない。だからもう経済伸びてないのね。イスラエル800万人のうち、166万人アラブで、人権与えてないでしょ、この人たちに。
そうなの？
うん。 選挙権ないの。ひどいんだよ、イスラエルって国は。ユダヤ人だけの。
ウエストバンクとか、また地区じゃなくて、イスラエルの中に。
もともとだってここはだって、アラブの人たちが住んでたからね。だから、元の人たちまだいるんですよ。民主主義じゃないの。他のやつはもっとひどくて。まあ、シリア、イラクのアイシス崩壊して。だから、350万人トルコに難民がね、今までいる。それから、おととしトルコクーデターでしょ。これも CIA が仕掛けたんじゃないかと。僕は思ったけどね、エルドアンを落とそうとしてね。ミャンマーのロヒンギャでしょ。イエメンの内乱があるでしょ。それから、アフガニスタンの混乱ってどういうことだ。アメリカファーストの犠牲だよね。アフガニスタンの混乱って書いてある。まあ、もっと言えばアメリカの搾取だよね。パキスタンのトライバルエリアって、これこう言ってるけど、本当は、パキスタンの政府とね、インテリジェンスともともと別組織なんですよ。情報機関と。それは一緒になってないから、パキスタンはうまく回ってない。それから、バングラデシュってテロがあるでしょ。ブロガー殺されたりしてるでしょ。それから、サウジのカタール断交。これはもう、おそまそのものだよね。モハンマド、ガルマン。もう最悪だよ。それから、最近は話題してないけど、僕は取材見たのは、ルーダンのね、1980年ネパールに入って、だから、今60万人いるけど、ルーダン。かつて90万人いたんだよね。30万人いる。イラクに続く61人。まあ。ね、ルータンも未だに帰りたいと思ってるんですね。で、そういうような国家ってやっぱり、そういうふうな問題深いってね。アメリカとロシアとかヨーロッパが、まあ、例えば全員じゃなくて、できればいい思いしたいみたいな、そういうふうな形で関与しようとしてるね。アメリカなんか露骨にアメリカファーストって金稼げる。だから、まあ日本人から見れば悪いやつだね、トランプ。アフガニスタンの東西の人に、サウジに出るみたいな。イエメンの国民とかアフガニスタンの国民はどうでもいい。国連無能だと。で、僕が言ってるのは日本は世界最高民主主義なのに、そうしたノウハウを国連として支援してない。なぜ支援しないのと言ってるわけですよ。この本をね。日本だけなんですよ、この地域でね、貢献できそうな。いや、だから例えばさ、アメリカ、アフガニスタンに搾取してるでしょ。でさ、国連に人を送って、国連がアフガニスタンの人たちを助ければいいんですよ。日本がそこに入って。日本政府が出てくとさ、トランプがなんだか見るから、グテレスっていう今あんまり、日本のやつがいいんだよね。セクレタリージェネラル。グテレスの名前でやれんの。
ああ、国連。
日本が金出してね。日本がもっと人を送ってさ、国連送ってないから。もっと人をいっぱい送ってさ、でやればいいの。 で、安倍さんがそういう玉かっていうと、ちょっと知らないんじゃないかと思うんだな。でもあの人、日本人だからもっとやりたいと思ってんじゃないか。知らないんだよ。
この間の決議、これの決議の時、チェアマン
何日やの？
これの、イランとです
え？
北朝鮮の政策決議。
あ、そうだったの？
した安保理に。
あれ？まあ、日本人が、立派な日本人がいるって聞いたことないんだけどね。たまたまチェアマンやっただけだな。きっと。きっと、多少英語ができてる。違うかな。それで、この今のアフリカ4冊目なの。北アフリカ数カ国。これ書いたときは、アフリカって嫌だなと思って書き始めたのね。遠いし。書いてるうちにやっぱり愛着を覚えてきてね。覚えてきたの。で、何分かったかっていうと、日本人が何貢献できるか全く分かってなかった。で、5月目は東、東部ナンバー6冊目が西部中アフリカね。まあこれ実際に1月12月発売ですね。まあ今までお金ばっか出してきてるね、日本ね。じゃなくて、ハードって鉄道とか高速道路とか、そういうやつね。IT とか。これはソフトって言うんですね。ソフトウェアね。ソフトウェアと組織づくりとか戦略とか。最大の貢献は国家予算とか戦略ですね。これは、行動鉄道なんですね。改めてね、我々の力を入れる必要はない。もちろん、インドみたいにね、中国嫌いな国は、じゃあ日本がやりましょうっていう。アフリカの国はどうしたらいいかわかんないんですよ、戦略。国家が。で、この書いた当時は平均年齢21歳。だから毎年取ってるから、今23ぐらいかな。これの元の原稿で2年ぐらい経ってる。まあ、若いからね、これいろんなことあるけどね、なんていうか、スラムでもね、明るいよね、みんなね。暗くないんですよ。若いからなんだよね、きっと。日本みたいに高齢化じゃないから、明るいよね。貧困はひどい、産業もない、HIV がもう蔓延して。 インフラない、医療ない、スキルがない、人材育成ない。だから、あるの若さと明るさ。HIV 感染してても彼は明るいんだよ。だから、まあ、400ドルとかね、年間、一人当たり GDP。ただね、政府のないソマリアでさ、40が入ってる。中国がこれから高速道路、あと、まあ、全アフリカに高速道路を入れていくんでしょうけどね。あとね、ここね、ヨーロッパ植民地の名残が、植民地の搾取じゃないんだけど、まあ搾取っていうか、昔の投資したものが残ってて、それからの上がりをフランスなんかもらったりしてるんだけど、ノウハウがないもんだから、ダイヤモンドとか銀鉱山とか、彼ら自身が採掘できないのね。で、結局、政府の汚職と組んで、国民が貧しい。で、進出したヨーロッパの企業は儲かってる。安く売っちゃうからね、政府。で、60年代独立らしくやっても50年経ってるけど、結局50年間何やったのかっていうと、部族間対立とかさ、まあ、内戦だよね、ずっと。やっぱり内戦なくても、その独裁政権でね、大統領と家族だけがいいようにしてきた。アフリカの国は民主化あんまりない。長さと希望というのがね。天然資源って貧しい。なぜ貧しいかっていうと、天然資源を開発をヨーロッパに頼んで、ムガベみたいに、自分が私利私欲で金集めちゃって、国民に還元してないから、国民になる。それから、北アフリカはね、アラブの春があったんですよ。北アフリカだけはね。で、民主化の意味しなかった。何も起こらない。混乱したのはリビア。まあ、エジプトも混乱したけど、まあ、そう大した混乱ではない。リビアほどではない。リビアは豊かな国だったけど、本当にもう、何もなくなっちゃったね。これアメリカが悪いよね。英語に陰謀だよね。まあ、カナビもうちょっとね、おとなしくやればよかったけど、あいつもやっぱり、性格悪いよな。性格悪いよな。アフリカに貢献する中国で、これはだから中国はね、搾取してないんですよ。ヨーロッパみたいに。金入れてね、要するにビジネスやってるの。で、それじゃあ工事学園とか農業科学センター作ったりしてね。結構。ただ、事前事業じゃなくて彼らはね、中国人っていうのはやっぱり金儲けだね。日本人と違って。日本人は本当になんて事前事業みたいな。彼ら金儲け。その国が何だろうと関係なく、例えば、100億ドルだろうと何だろうと関係なく、イエスって言えば、金も使ってね、天井作って、ダム作って、インフラ作って、道路引いて、で、破産しよう何しよう関係なくて、中国やっちゃう。その代わり、例えば、金鉱山とかダイヤモンド鉱山を市で持ってっちゃう。そういうことは中国人。日本人はそれある。で、安倍さんは300億ドルね、2016年。3年間投資で言ったけど、中国はもう14年でもう6000億ドル投資。だからその300億ドル投資したから、なんかしようって言っても中国に勝てない。投資金額だけじゃなくてね、もう一つは致命的に負けてるのはね、中国のアフリカの記事もう文化のことがあるんですよ。日本はほとんどない。ほとんどない。 で、これでUnno塾でやるったら、これ見てね、もう日本がみっともないということで、この間、土曜日のね、サイト作成に僕言ったけど、日本人海外宣伝したり説明したりすることを昔からやったり、外務省とか政府の機関がそういう努力を全くしてない。で、中出てくるサウススダンなんか、外務大臣が7時間しか滞在しなかったね。何しに来たんだ、このババアみたいなですね。なんか録音してっから。だけど、本当になんてみっともないっていうかね。アフリカの現状最大の問題はインフラがない、人材がない、政治が安定してない。で、中国から投資とかインドウェルカムだけど、身の丈をアフリカの人たちは自分は分かってないんだよね。多分将来、今のほっといたら破綻することが増えてくる。デフォルトね。で、あとは日本にしかできないことがあるっていうのは、これは何を言いたいかっていうと、国家の計画を日本人が出さないから、日本人って。ね。そういうことできる。出さないの日本人はね、なんか知らないけど、トンマなんだよね。世界中で日本だけの。ソフト面の支援ができる。欧米とか中国はできない。その気がないと当たり前だよね。もう、世界銀行とか IMF とか、一帯一路なんて儲かんないことはやらない。日本人は儲かんないことはやらない。アフリカの人はね、日本人の良さを知らない。日本は欧米、アフリカのことを知らない。これで本を書こうとしてるんですよ。日本人は民主基盤、儒教、仏教、神道、仏道、科学で。
それで、日本の政府とかが、この間も、日本の省庁主催で、なんか5カ国ぐらいになって、今、インフラ輸出、日本のインフラ輸出が高い、輸出を加速させます。で、今それを、ツアーをやったり宣伝して、そのところは、箱物っていうか、橋を架けるバンドを作るだけじゃなくて、そういうソフト面というか、人材の育成も必要だし、長期にわたる保守メンテナンスも必要だし、そういうソフト面のこともそうなんですけど、できますからね。そういうことで言ってますけど、実際には、絶対的にまだ、そうじゃなくて、一つは、多分そうは言ってながら、実際のプロジェクト何をやってるのか、こういう技術はこれだから、これを入れないと、それってこれ書いてある、都市開発に出すから、やることじゃない。
だから、もうここで言ってるのはさ、国家計画をどう作るかってね、ここから入って、5年計画、10年計画で、最後は日本は勝ちなさい。もっと政権にやらない。ね ?5 年10年すぐ経っちゃうんだからさ。で、国家の徹底的に信頼を得てさ、日本ってさ、短期期で仕事を取るとか物事を進めることできない民族だから。だから長い時間かけて、ね。
この間、どっかの国の政府さんにかけたんですけどね、そういう進めとか人材の交流とか人材育成も含めて、現地の課題を考えると、そういう人たちを育てて、日本の会社が一個全部やるんだけど、日本の特徴を生かすのであれば、日本が全部やるんじゃなくて、相手の人たちがちゃんと将来活躍できるように、何をやればいいのか考えられる、そういう教育とか、 それはそれで日本としてはそうやって聞くとそれはやってるっていう答えを伺うんですよ。三官学で人材の受け入れをしていて、でそういう人たちが少しずつ増えてくる。分野ごとに見ると確かにそういう人たちがいたりするんですけど、だったらもっとできてておかしくないっていう、なんでできないんだろうっていう疑問が出てるし、
それはね、それは根底にね、ここに書いてある民主主義の基盤として五輪五条あるって言ってるんだけど、ここの教育長校の精神とかね、人義列心がさ、うやむやになっちゃってる。だから、正しい行いとかさ、相手の国に対する思いやりの心とかさ、礼儀の礼とかさ、なおざりになってる。だからそうなっちゃう。で、あなたは何のために生きてるんですかってこと考えてない。だから、僕は一番大元は、ここの見出しのね、日本にできてないよ。そこから全てスタート。だから、ここら辺のとこだけ、民主主義読んだってわかんない。やってるよって今言ってない。やってないだろう。だから、その、精神の大元は腐ってんじゃないのっていうことを、この3月に僕は言った。そこが大根本の柱なんだけど。でそれが、例えば、知事子の信とか、君臣の義とか、夫婦の別とか、長老の序とか、法医の信っていうのはね、教育直後はもう、半分廃れちゃってるから。だから、もう一回ちゃんとやんなさいよと。いうことは本で書いてる。ね。で本を僕は100回読みなさいってそういうことなんだ。100回読むとどこでいつもそばに置いて、これ勉強してるときちょっと待ってくれよと。おかしいなと。三徳五輪五条。三徳って言ってないけど、めんどくさいから三徳書いてないけど、三徳五輪五条もう一回ね、きちんと見直しなさい。だから、僕自身はだから65歳で自分の人生をものすごく反省して、それで4年間考えて69歳で本書き出したんだけど、体系的に書いてるんだね。体系的に。だから、少なくとも1年半ぐらいのスケジュールで持って書いて、そんな簡単に書けるもんじゃないの分かってて、で、大変だけど、そういうことやる日本人いないから、僕が書いてる。だけど、普通だったらもうそれを考えてるだけでもう嫌になっちゃって。心の身だしなみだけで終わっちゃうんだけど、その後ずっと未だに書いてる。だからそれはだから、日本の将来を考えてから、僕だけだったら、もしくは本が売れればいいだけだったら、こんなことしない。でも、ここに書いてなぜこんなことをくどく書いたかっていうと、今高橋言ったように、やってるよって言うけどやってない。それをね、言いたかった。で本当にわかるかっていうと、これを書いて読んでも、僕の本読まないとわかんない。こっちの本を読まないとわかんない。寂しいなっていう気がするんだけど。でもあれ読めこれ読めっても、じゃあ、心の身だしなみの本を読めば、一回読んで理解するかって、一回読んで何書いてるか全然わかんない。だから、わかんないんですよ。今の教育体系から落ちてるからね。なおさらですよね。じゃあ、アフリカの民主主義を勉強するためにね、4冊目のさ、英語の世界から学ぶ民主主義をもう一回読めって言って。読めるようなものじゃないんですよ、これ。開いただけで、みたいになっちゃう本だから。
どっかの会社の授業所で大丈夫です。本買って読みますからって言ってるのはちょっとまずいってことですね。
まあ、それは嘘ですね。そんなもんじゃない。だから、木本が、この民主主義出した時はね、週末読みますと。俺から言ったの。お前なんか勘違いしてないで。これ読んだら2ヶ月かかるよって言ったの。みんなそんなノリで。 でね、本書の狙いっていうのは、その無用のようだって、リベラルアーツはね、リベラルアーツ。無用のようだけど、様々なビジネスをね、大きく捉えて、修練の場でね、大きく捉えて、そういうことを志す人たちのために本書を書いて。で、アフリカ関心ない。ところが日本人を最も貢献できる地域だと。事実を我々はきちんと認識する必要がありますよ。で、民主主義という目で彼らの将来と現実を受け止めて、我々の儒学というところの先のところで五輪五条の視点から、日本人が何をできるか、日本人の精神、何ができるか、何が関わるかということを視点で書いたよ。で、民主主義というテーマについては、僕は専門家じゃないんで、YouTube をまとめたからね。いろいろね、僕は結局文章よりも YouTube が一番なんか、現実に近い情報を伝えてる。ピンキリなんで YouTube って。素人がアップしてたりね。我々みたいに。それから CNN とか CCTV とかね。RT ロシアテレビとか。アルジャジーラ出してるとかね。もしくは素人が出してるとか。自由に選べるでしょ。だから中で素人出してるの選んだりするのは、正しい情報を伝えてるかどうかわかんないけど、これかもしれないな、みたいなのは、文章でないんだからない。ただ大変なのは、要約と単語を書かにいかんでね、それが大変。画像だから。必ず英語のテロップが出るやつ選んでんだけど、それでも大変。ただどの種類本もね、日本語だけ読んでもね、結構なボリュームがあるんで、それでも全体流れつくはずです。で、情報量は英語だと1000倍ぐらいある。まあ、もっとある。で、こうした民主主義が欧米人の議論できるようにならなければ、グローバルリーダーにはなれない。あと、僕の背景だけど、これはあなた知ってるよね。これ、リベラルアーツ、資本主義、日本の精神、儒学、終身成果遅刻閉店。で、この日にちはデタラメだけど、まあ、それを本にしたよ。この先生は取れてないよと。自分の意見で勝手に書いてるからねと。で、さっきも言ったように威厳を持って外国人に接するようなことを意図している。だからまあ、テレビで取り上げられるようなやつは選んでない。言い方変えればね。常識に基づいてないですよ。まあ、これが、まあ、議論できるような内容ね。まあ、これは、専門先制国家とか民主主義の可能性はどうかと。将来どうなるか。民主主義のベストかそうじゃないのか。民主主義ね、一番大事な。そこに住んでる人はどういう生活してるのか。我々は彼らはどう考えればいいのか。どうするしてあげればいいのか。民主主義ね。政府じゃない。民主主義。間違えたよ。政府。大統領はどういう人がいいとか、そうじゃない。民主主義。間違えてる部分、YouTube いっぱいあるの。大統領が40年もやってからダメだと。何がダメなんだって分かってないのも結構ある。彼らハッピーならいいんだ。国民が。 これ極めて浅い現象的な情報っていうのは、例えばバックパッカーとかね、ヒッチハイカーとか、現地の大使館とか、ね、あと学術的な情報。英語の方はね、これはもうエンドレスだね。もうエンドレス。もう自分
民衆とその政府、民衆と政府で、シンガポール、ベトナムとかバングラ、まあ、知ってるところで感じるのはどこも同じとかあって、それぞれやっぱ制約があると思うんですよ。シンガポールは一応いろんな統制上統制されてるし、ベトナムもまあその権力構造は統独裁ですし、いろんなメディアの統制もかかってたりすると。ただ民衆の人たちがそれに浸水したり、それでいいんだと思ってるかっていうと、そうじゃなくて、ただそのおかしいっつってそれにこう盾ついてこうなんか変えるっていうそういうことでもなくて、まああれはあれでしょうがないみたいな、なんかこう距離感っていうのは日本でもあるのかもしれないですけど、その例えば共産党一党独裁の中に組み込まれているから、やっぱりそれを支持するとか、それに浸水してるっていうかというと全くそうではなくて、
平和なんだよ。
まあある種そういう形で安定している
平和なんですかね。ベトナムは平和なの。
どっかでそれぞれが落としどころをそれぞれ見つけて、折り合いをつけて多分距離感を保ってやってるんだと思うんですよね。
アフリカみたいにインフレが 100% とか 1000% になると暴動を起こる。国家がちゃんと管理してればね、国民はね、不安あるけど、日本と一緒だ。
確かにそうですね。まああるけど、暴動まではいかないし、まあ周りの人たち同士で、まあ仕方ないねみたいな、そういうこうまとまりがあって。
多くの日本人は日本の政治がダメだって言うけど、不満がいっぱいある。日本しか知らないから。でもこんな安定してる国ほどどこもない。不満だって、いい例はさ、女房なんかも仕事もしてない、何もないでしょ。でそういう何もない人ってちょっとなんかあればつまんないことにいっぱい不満持つ。暇だから。でもさ、俺みたいに忙しいしてる人はさ、どんなことあっても不満なんかないの、余裕ないの。だから、今の日本の政治はね、安定しすぎちゃっててさ、つまんないことに不満いっぱい持ってね、相撲が変だとかさ、何が変だとか、ついでに都議会議員変だとかって、同じ序列で言ってるでしょ。平和なんだよ。もうどうでもいいよっていう、そういう感じですよね。で、民主主義は、ここに書いてある5つのことを選んでね、まあ1冊目で。で、自由で公正な選挙、市民参加の政治、for the people, by the people, to the people、人権の保護、法による統治、報道の自由。この5つなんですよ。でこの5つを書いてある日本語はない。どこにもない。英語はこういうのいっぱいある。なんでかな。関心が高いんだね、外人はきっと。日本人はさ、学者がやっぱり民主主義語るからさ、やっぱりやったら長くてさ、難しいんだよ。だから難しいから日本人読まない。読める資料って東京都がね、出版した民主主義のね、学生用のね、ブロシュあるんだけど、あれはわかりやすかった。どっかで出てくるけどね。一冊目だ。ここで出てくる。これはアフリカだから。で、これに照らしてね、アフリカは、ここではね、ソクラテスの一冊のやつを書いてるけど、要するに、選挙民がね、専門知識のない選挙民が投票して正しいを選ぶことはできない。ソクラテス言ったわけだよね。だからそんなことは、そういうふうな選挙そのものは正しくない。ね。 選挙そのものに無理がある。で、アフリカではどうなってるのか。アフリカの場合はね、選挙っていうか、大統領どっち選ぶかだよね。で、大抵の場合はね、リグドってイカサマ選挙。ひどいところだと投票所を来させないように両手ちょぎっちゃうなんていう国もあるくらいだからね、投票できない。凄まじいよね。まあ、なんだかんだ言ったってね、リーダーがしっかりしてる国はちゃんと回ってんだ。アフリカはね。リーダーがしっかりしない国はやっぱりダメだ。だから民主主義だろうとオーソリタリアンで関係ない。だから一貫してさ、30年やろうが50年やろうが、ちゃんと収まってる国は100年やってもいいんだ。同族で。ね、問題なのは、何年やってるかじゃなくてさ、ちゃんとしたリーダーじゃないって思うんだよ。で、やっと50年経ってね、で、もうそろそろ、部族対立もね、収まってきたから、じゃあこれからどうすんのよ、みたいなところやってきたねっていう。そういうことだね。で、これは11月出版で、Africa in general でしょ。Arab Spring didn't trigger democracy. Examples of democratic intervention. これね、なんだか忘れちゃったんだけど、それ出てくるからね。African presidential term limit extension 伸ばそう。Europe sucked wealth from Africa. 搾取。Africa prefers the Chinese regime. 中国人好きだよ。Number of Chinese workers in Africa. そんないないんだよね。騒いでるほど。Japanese investment in Africa's growth stand by democracy. これはなんだかちょっと忘れちゃったけど、まあその人でございます。Egypt, Libya. リビアね。Africa better without spread of democracy. Tunisia, Ethiopia, Morocco, Algeria. で、アフリカ in general. で、これはね、これは北アフリカだね。まあ、これちょっと54カ国あるね。北アフリカはね、比較的安定してるよね。リビア以外。中東よりも南アジアに近い。中東なんてみんなこんな人でしょ。リビア以外はね、まあそこそこ。チュニジアは政変起きてないね。で、これはアフリカのサマリー。Africa is the world's second largest and second most populous continent, the first being Asia. With 1.2 billion people as of 2016, it accounts for about 16% of the world population. 16% of the world population. It contains 54 fully recognized sovereign states, countries, 9 territories, and 2 de facto independent states with limited or no recognition. ソマリランドなんかそうだね。ソマリアの上にソマリランド。独立しようとしてるけど。no recognition. Africa's average population is youngest amongst all the continents. The median age in 2012 was 19.7, so 24 years old だから、25 years. 25 years, but still they get baby. So it means not 24 or 5 years, still 22 or 23 years. I don't know why, but they are making a baby anyway. Many. Every family, 6 or 7, uncountable. When the worldwide median age was 30.4 years old. Algeria is Africa's largest country by area, and Nigeria is the largest by population. Nigeria is almost 200 million, 190 million, yes. Okay. Africa hosts a large diversity of ethnicities, cultures, and languages. So many diversified. In the late 19th century, European countries colonized almost all of Africa. Africa also varies greatly with regard to environments, economics, historical ties, and government systems. However, most present states in Africa originate from a process of decolonization in the 20th century. African nations have attempted to cooperate through the establishment of the African Union, which is headquartered in Addis Ababa. Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. This is a fragile state index here. Africa is fragile here. Most fragile. Middle East, right? Like this. Then YouTube. Which country are taking off in Africa? And this is 10 minutes video. Since the start of the 21st century, Africa has experienced significant boost, especially the poorest countries on the continent. With the exception of South Africa, the countries of sub-Saharan Africa achieved annual growth rate of 6.2. Sub-Saharan, this way. Sub-Saharan. Oh, sub-Saharan country. Here. This is North Africa, sub-Saharan. By comparison, that is twice the growth rate seen in Latin America during the same period of time. Okay, so then.それで、アフリカの特色の第一、貧困病気、飢饉、悲劇。第2は、アフリカは巨大だ。EU、アメリカ、インド、中国、アルゼンチン、アフリカを起きた。2010年エコノミストは希望のない大陸だと言いました。で、最近大きく変化してきて、僕はだから希望のないというか、さっき言った夢と希望、若さと言いましたけど、南アフリカの同時サハラの地域の成長をよく見ると、今上に書いてあって、成長率は当てはめる2倍って書いてある。アイボリーコースト、エチオピア、タンザニア、ルワンダ、コンゴ 7% 超えてる。アイボリーコースト、コートディボワールね。子供の死亡率 17% から 8% 減った。いつからいつかっていうと分かんないんだけど、まあ、ともかくドラスティックに減って、危機の死亡率も半減。99年には、極貧の、1999年からだろうな。50%、8% だったのが、2016年では 35% になった。4億2000万の極貧の状態で。それでも4億2000万極貧。極貧っていうのは1ドル25セント以下。今1ドル90セントを極貧と言ってるんだよね。
ああ、1日。
うん。でもこの統計ってこの時は何年か前だから1ドル25セント。数十年後にはラオスになれば新たな。昨今投資の半分は資源に関係ない投資。資源に関係ない国の投資。資源持たない。ケニア、ウガンダ、タンザニア。彼ら資源持ってるね。モザンビーク、ザンビア。アフリカのライオンと呼ばれている。ルワンダは人口1200万人だが2001年からの成長率は 9%。この国は石油とか天然資源がない。これが成長を維持してきたのはサブサハランのビジネス立ち上げるのが容易だから。人口の 98% 健康医療を受けることができる。カガメね、大統領、シンガポールも反対してきた。 これだからルワンダの悲劇って言ってね、1990年代に100万人、100日間虐殺があった国なんでね。仏族と土族ってね、争う。土族の、大統領、トップが鏡。この人が今、トップ。エチオピアでは人口1億だが、2000万人が栄養失調。先制国家。この10年で経済は5倍成長し、GDP 成長率はまず 10% 以上。技術関連、設備投資、輸入は無税。基本設1年間無税。ボツワナは左による飢饉と世界で2番目にエイズが多い。しかしながら PPP ベースで、この本はね、全部 PPP ベースじゃなくて実経済ベースで書いてるね、GDP パーパーセント。だけど、GDP はコロンビア、ブラジル、タイと同じだ。ボツワナね。その理由は健康管理の財務支援と法制度の確立がしっかりしている。飽食度数は悪くない。スペインとかイスラエル、台湾よりもいい。売上高が10億ドル以上の金額もある。ボツワナってね、ボツワナですよね。ボツワナはね、大統領がいい人なの。名前なんつったっけな、ボツワナはね、英語うまいんだよ、この人。ボツワナ。
これってルワンダじゃないんですか？
ボツワナ。ルワンダの鏡。イアン・カーマ、この人。イアン・カーマ。これ、
ヨーロッパの人みたいですね。
ボツワナ。いやいや、南アフリカ。イアン・カーマってどこ？あった。いや、これじゃないな。イアン・カーマって言うんですよ。これ親父じゃない？これの息子、イアン・カーマ。カーマって、この写真の人。英語うまい。
アフリカ人っぽくないですよ。
アフリカ、ここ、ボツワナって南アフリカだけど、なんか、南アフリカ。南アフリカね。で、ナイジェリアだけで映画制作者100万人いるんだよ、ナイジェリア。あとはオンラインバンキングと携帯電話、これどこでもあるな。ユーバーとかね。ユーバーってタクシーじゃなくてオートバイね。電話とオートバイ来る。農家で、これどこでもそうだよ。あれ、単語あるってことはビデオあるのかな？あ、ビデオあるんだ。クロスサル。ディサイプル。ディサイプル。これは、多分短いよね。どうしちゃった？立ち上がらなくなっちゃった。なんで立ち上がらないの？あれ？ネット繋がってるよね。 で繋がんないの。あ、これだ。
これからお話しすることは、ちょっと公にはできない、秘匿性の高い秘密なので。
It's hard to put aside two thoughts when thinking about Africa. The first is to think that Africa is a continent forever sentenced to poverty, illness, starvation, and tragedy, and a lot of tragedy. Further, Africa is often thought of as a somewhat compact territory where everything is connected. To Western eyes, Africa can look more like a country than a continent, with many failing to realize the colossal size of this continent. Africa is as big as Europe, the US, India, China, and Argentina combined. So now you can imagine the diversity that this huge territory must contain. In 2010, The Economist referred to Africa as the continent without hope. But as can often happen, things rapidly changed in Africa. Since the start of the 21st century, Africa has experienced a significant boost, especially in the poorest countries on the continent. With the exception of South Africa, the countries of sub-Saharan Africa achieved annual growth rates of 6.2%. By comparison, that is twice the growth rate of countries in Latin America during the same time period. In 2015, 5 of the 10 economies that grew the most in the world were in Africa. These are the Ivory Coast, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Rwanda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The growth rate of these countries exceeded 7%.
The Democratic Republic of Congo has been ranked among the top 10 countries for reforms in the world. For example, in 2014, there are already nearly 7,000 enterprises that have been created.
Although the growth figures were a bit smaller, the situation remains similar in the year 2016. All of this growth has led to some really significant social consequences, so let's have a look at some of these. For one, life expectancy has increased significantly over the last 8 years. Child mortality figures and those dying from starvation has been cut in half. To sum up, extreme poverty used to affect 58% of the population in 1999, and now it has decreased to just 35%. It is still true that more than 420 million people are still suffering from extreme poverty in Africa, which is tragic, but fortunately the future is looking brighter than ever. Another thing is also certain. Africa is going to have a major global role over the coming decades.
And its middle class, or consumer class, is the fastest growing in the world. The fact is, Africa is no longer emerging. It is here now.
Africa is being urbanized quickly, which allows for both the provision of public services and also economies of scale. In the near future, we are going to find many of the world's biggest cities are on this continent. And who knows, Lagos, Nairobi or Accra might become the new Shanghai in just a few short decades. For example, the tallest skyscraper in Africa, the Hass Tower, is currently being built in Nairobi. In Accra, the capital city of Ghana, 6 malls have been built in only 6 years. And while that may not seem like a lot, when you consider that there was only 1 mall in the entire city before those 6 new ones were built, it seems like a little bit more. Foreign investment has also grown strongly in the last few years, and half of these investments operate in areas that have nothing to do with Africa's natural resources. This is important because many of the countries in Africa are trying to develop industries outside of raw materials, so they are depending less on these natural resources. These economies are known as the African lions.
The African lions.
These African lions include Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Mozambique, and Zambia. These are the countries in Africa that are developing the fastest. Now, we're going to discuss each of them in detail in upcoming videos, but today we're just going to focus on 3 of them. First of all,
Rwanda.
This is a small country with a population of only 12 million people, and it doesn't have any coastline. It is still a poor country, but it has registered an almost 9% annual growth since the year 2001, and importantly, this country has no oil or other important natural resources. So the big question is, well, how did they do it? This has actually been mostly down to supporting business creation. This is why Rwanda is the second easiest country to do business in sub-Saharan Africa, according to the World Bank Doing Business report. So the question you might be asking is this a coincidence? And we at Visual Politic, we really don't think so.
We are now, for example, looking at the secondary cities. The cities, if they are well organized, if they are well invested, and you put everything that's needed, and it is well connected, the pole of growth.
Now, thanks to all of this, nearly all children have primary education, and 98% of its people already have access to healthcare. As a consequence, child mortality has been reduced by 60%, and AIDS and malaria have also seen significant reductions. Further, Rwanda's president, Paul Kagame, claims to be a disciple of Lee Kuan Yew, the legendary leader of Singapore, who we're going to be discussing in an upcoming episode, so don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, so you will get notified about that, and also won't miss out on any of our other videos.
Kagame is more than 20 years. He's in the position of president.
Ethiopia.
This is a much larger country, with a population of nearly 100 million people. In Ethiopia, around 20 million people still have nutritional problems. And that is not the only problem they have. The government's also become more authoritarian recently. However, things are changing fast, and today Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, is always pursuing significant construction projects. In fact, about a year ago, Addis Ababa opens the first modern tram system in all of sub-Saharan Africa. And to be honest, they deserve it. Ethiopia is a country which has grown significantly in the last 10 years. Its economy has multiplied by a factor of 5 in this period, and its GDP has grown by over 10% every year. So now you might be asking, well, how did they do it? Well, they were simply trying to be more attractive to investors than their neighboring countries. In doing so, the country has established 2 main priorities. 1, achieve stable macroeconomics, and 2, establish attractive taxation. For example, import of technological equipment, such as machinery, does not have any import charge. Further, companies don't have to pay any tax in their first 5 years, which is pretty nice.
Botswana.
The companies allowed not to pay the corporate tax first 5 years. Not first year.
5 years, you said?
5 years.
Charge. Further, companies don't have to pay any tax in their first 5 years, which is
5 years. Last year, 5 years. Yeah. Okay.
pretty nice.
Botswana.
So we couldn't do this video without mentioning Botswana, a country which recently celebrated in 2016 the 50th anniversary of its independence. Botswana has been the greatest economic success.
Okay, this president is from his father and the current president, 50 years.
In all of Africa. In fact, it is even one of the most successful worldwide. At the time of Botswana's independence in the year 1966, it was one of the poorest countries on the planet. On top of that, the country has suffered severe droughts and has suffered from the second largest AIDS epidemic in the world. In spite of all these obstacles, the country has experienced developments so significant that its GDP in purchasing power parity is equivalent to countries such as Colombia, Brazil, or Thailand. This is obviously considering the different levels of prices among these countries. Here, the key to success can be found in the strength of its national institutions, their healthy public finances, and above all, the country's legal certainty. In fact, in the last CPI Corruption Perception Index, Botswana was ranked in 31st position. This is a better position than countries like Spain, Israel, or Taiwan.
Rule of law, regulatory reform, good governance, those things matter even more because people should be able to start a business and ship their goods without having to pay a bribe or hire somebody's cousin.
But now, how about some more surprising facts about Africa? You should know that this continent is already home to 400 companies with a turnover of more than $1 billion a year. So it really does seem that the end of Africa being a totally poor continent is coming to an end. Furthermore, in Africa, we can also find Nollywood, the second largest film industry in terms of films produced in the world, only 2,500 films less than Bollywood. Further, in Nigeria alone, the film industry employs around 1 million workers.
I swear!
And now for just one final surprise. Africa is the world's leader in online banking and mobile phone payments. Yes, you probably weren't expecting that, but it is absolutely true. Today, many farmers share information through SMS, and in the streets of Rwanda, it is popular to use Safe Motos, which is like a Rwandan version of Uber, except there's a small difference. Instead of using cars, they use motorcycles because there are very few cars available. So the thing about Africa is that it is changing incredibly fast. But the truth is that there are still many challenges and difficulties that the continent is going to face ahead. For example, consolidating the rule of law, reducing poverty, and improving their infrastructure. And of course, they need to put an end once and for all to all those terrible dictatorships in countries like Angola, Eritrea, or Equatorial Guinea. However, everything does seem to indicate that the future for Africa is brighter than it has ever been. So I hope you found that video interesting, and we would love to know what you think. Do you think that Africa is going to become a major player in the coming decades? Do let us know in the comments below. We love to read them and know what you guys think. Also, do click the like button below this video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos every Monday and every Thursday, and I'll see you in the next one.
Okay. This is Africa general. Then moving to the discussion, Talk Africa, smart cities in Africa. Smart city. This is a little bit difficult English. It means not traditional English. Too much local accent of English. According to the UN Habitat, up to 1.2 billion people in Africa will reside in urban centers by 2030. 2030, city dwellers, 1.2 billion. And this number is expected to rapidly increase in the year after. Urbanization has dramatically changed energy consumption patterns, water and sanitation needs, food security, and mobility of human beings. And with these changes, Africa cities face unprecedented challenges arising from the inability to cater on the demands of urban settlers. So, in what ways can government on the continent harness ICTs to make better decisions around resource allocation and service delivery? And how can Africa's urban area reinvent themselves to become more safe, sustainable, and smart cities in Africa? Okay? Inhabitant 第1回国連にこれはね、国連機関、都市と居住の国連機関、14億人が都市に定住する。スマートシティ構想する以外と都市機能が麻痺すると。で、人口が都市に集中すると交通システムが麻痺してしまう。スラム化が進行し、居住地域が不足する。相当慎重に都市化計画を立てていかないととんでもないことになる。多くにはどうしていいかわからないか。現状、スマートシティを実現するためにはどのようなスキルが必要で、何が必要なのか、どのように進めたらいいかって分かっていない。これはすごい現実なんですよ。今のままだったら間違いなくね、スラム化が進んでいくんですよ。何が問題かというとね、ウォーターリソースとかいろいろエレクトリシティとか言うでしょ。一生懸命国家計画立ててるの、今まで過去10年間。なぜスラム化が進行するかというと、それ以上に出生率が高い。いくら改革していっても子供の方が出生率が多いもんだから、追いつかない。内乱とか戦争があると子供増える。だから要するに、 生存本能か。
あ
でスラムが増加するどうしたらいいか。原因は統治のまずさと、統治のまずさっていうよりもね、とんでもない施策というより、違うんだよ。子供を作りすぎちゃう。そのために物をどうするかではなく、まず人の育成から始めない。だから食べ物ない、住まいない、水がない、薬ない。だから子供は作る。道路建設、水資源確保、電力供給、まず貧困の対策、女性の社会の参画、失業対策。どのような仕事を突然作り出すかできるか。ケニアのスラムを例にとると、いくら政府が電子化された銀行を考えて、人々が貧しかったら、それ利用できない。そういった底辺の基本的なところから考えていかなければならない。でこれはね、日本がね、役に立つんですよ、日本政府がね。こんなことを計画立てられない世界だ。で、ヨーロッパもアメリカも中国もやらない。だからかって小林一三さんがね、宝塚作った人でしょ。同じだ。ベトナムでもホーチミン郊外に新都市作ったでしょ。同じだ。だから中核都市に対して輪郭都市作らないと人口増加に追いつかない。そのためにモノレール作ったり、交通機関作ったり。そういうことですね。考えてない。どんどん交通渋滞が起こってさ、交通渋滞が。
全部が全部じゃないと思うんですけど、例えば日本の会社が都市計画のマスタープランとかってまあ結構やるんですよね。でそれに基づいて実際には橋を作ったり、まあ、何を作ったりっていうのは進むんですけど、コンサルそういうのの計画を作るコンサルタントもやっぱ例えば JICA の予算その事業を採択してお金持ってるそれなりわいなのでその意向に合う形でやっぱその仕事とか事前調査とか進めないといけないのでそれが中心になっちゃうので、まあ、その仕事取れないと動けないと動くためにはその仕事取らなきゃいけないでこれを取るためにはやっぱりこっちの採択者の意向に合った形で提案しなきゃいけないっていう多分なんていうか、まあ、そこに徹してればお金がもらえるとで変なこと書かなければちゃんとその調査事業もクロージングできるってまあそういう事業なんでしょうけどその一方で多分ジレンマを持ってる人もいるんじゃないかなと。
これはやっぱりさ、あれだよ、担当者変えればさ、ベトナム政府もコロッと変わっちゃうとこあるから、それはリスクが高いけど、それでもそれやらなかったらさ、長期的に大きな仕事は取れないよね。だから、それこそあんたのところの会社がさ、総合コンサルティングとして受けるっていうのも手だよね。都市計画をね、やる。だから例えばこれからはベトナムはローカルなね都市開発がだんだん重点に移っていくから、ローカルの都市開発にどういうふうにそれをやっていくのかっていうのは人口多いからねあそこね。だから都市だって10も20もあるけどそういうふうなところに対してホーチミンのやつのコピーをどうやって展開していくかっていう手だよね。そうすればもう10年計画になるよね。これはライトレインシステムって言ってるけどモノレールね。でこれは英語で言ってるのちょっと変えたけど、高速かあったかってあるかあったかだよね。4時ルワンダね ICT で4時スマートシティ構想をこれ持ってるね。彼らやっぱりなんて教育っていうかさ、40入れてもそれがちゃんとうまく ICT 導入を同点化するか、教師を同教育するか、あとエコシステム、ちょっと違うんだよね、今。幅広い社会全体を巻き込んだ改革、共存共栄していく仕組みのエコシステム。枠を超える。国境を超えて。サステナビリティね。持続可能性。これはアフリカの連中が言ってるんですよ、これね。スマートシティね。だから彼らは知ってんだよね。スマートシティ構想とかね。これが復習で書いたけど、もう一度スマートシティと何か。基本的にスマートシティって送電線網をつないでね、需給バランスを最適に保つスマートグリッドテクノロジー。電力なんだよね、スマートシティってね、基本的に。もうちょっと拡大で今解釈してるけどね。あと、これは知らないです。デューティーベアラー。これ専門用語なんですよ。デューティーベアラーとデューティーホルダー。デューティーホルダーって市民のことね。デューティーベアラーってどちらかというと政府。政府はその責任があるっていう。子供の教育に対して。それをデューティー、義務だよね。履行義務がある。で、権利のホルダーって、一般市民はそういうホルダーを持ってる。どういうふうに考えるんですかっていう、そういうふうな、最終的な政府だろう。いや、親か地方自治体かもしれない。地域の人の責任だろう。それをデューティーベアラーっていう言葉を使ってから本文でね。あとまだ南アフリカなんかはこのデューティーベアラーで、これ政府がデューティーベアラーって言うけど、じゃあ100万人学生いるけど今ね、予算は60万しか取らないよって言うと、デューティーベアラーとしては、もう100万人面倒見れないと国家。そういうふうに使うんだよね。RBA。これも専門用語。で、これはもう長いからね、こっち。IoT。これも知らないと思うんだけど、インフォーマルセトルメント。スラムのことなんだよ。もう知らなかった。インフォーマルセトルメント。インフォーマルのね、セトルメント。言葉通り。さっきのライトレールシステム。
中東なんかでも知ってますね。中東なんかでもモノレールとかライトレール走ってます。
中東？
ドバイ。
中東？あ、本当。これはエチオピアのケースだね。
多分予算もそんなに大きくないんだと思うんですよ。
短いからね。何百キロじゃなくて何十キロ。10キロとか20キロとか。あとブロードバンド。4G。アフリカはみんな 4G だな。あと単語で have direct relevance to have direct relevance to externality congestion landmass これね、これ usher in the area of peace これはよく出てくる usher in さっきも出てきたね usher ね incentivize ICT affordable これはオーステアって発音するのかなちょっと待ってね発音があれ辞書ないかこれだ
Austere.
あ、やっぱ違う。オスティア。オスティア。オスティア。で、飾り気ない。オスティア。ターシャリーエデュケーション、大学だね。SDGs、Sustainable Development Goals。SDGs、SAT、Scholastic Assessment Test、SAT。アメリカの進学テスト検査 TAP Disseminate Devote the country's heavy reliance on oil to inconsistent with one's promises for profit to the Arab Spring OK これはちょっと英語がね、just English is not easy to understand. It's difficult. Especially professor's English is not clear pronounced. It's kind of African accent. 長いな。This one. ダメだね、これ。できないんだね。おかしいな、ちょっと。あ、これなんだ。
When we talk about sustainability, has been there a lot longer.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
According to UN Habitat, up to 1.2 billion Africans will reside in urban centers by 2030. Urbanization has dramatically changed energy consumption patterns, water and sanitation needs, food security, and the mobility of human beings. And with these changes, Africa's cities face unprecedented challenges arising from the inability to cater to the demands of urban settlement. To make better decisions around resource allocation and service delivery, and how can urban areas reinvent themselves to become more safe, sustainable, and smart cities in Africa? I'm Kelly Makaribe. Welcome to Tech Africa. Now, urbanization is a powerful driver of economic development and social mobility, and has also been a catalyst for technological progress in cities globally. And as home to some of the fastest growing cities in the world, Africa is no exception. In May, Rwanda hosted the third Transform Africa Summit that focused on developing smart cities. The initiative aims at leveraging technology solutions to improve efficiency of cities by building partnerships with governments, academia, and private sector to increase its relevance in the ICT ecosystem. Joining me in studio to tell us more about the idea is Professor Alfred Omenya, Principal Researcher at EcoBuild Africa. Thanks for being here, Professor. So, for starters, smart cities, sustainable cities, are they one and the same thing, or are they different?
In fact, the divide between sustainable cities and smart cities is very thin. I would say one is older, the other one is a bit younger. When you talk about sustainability, has been there a lot longer, and that came from green cities idea, that is a starting point. And as early as 2000, in Johannesburg World Summit for Sustainable Development, that was clearly spelled out that what constituted sustainable cities was largely about very sensitive use of resources in ways that then, protect the resources from an urban perspective in ways that limit externalities, pollution and so on. When you look at smart cities, what you're actually focusing on is communicative cities, or intelligent cities, or responsive cities. The focus here is really about how you interface, how you use technology to be able to get responsiveness in infrastructure, in services, in governance, so that you can get participatory governance by people being able to feedback, quite quickly to those who are actually the duty bearers, if you can actually call them that, and also socially within the city, that we can be able to then communicate quite quickly and say, look here, this part of town is bad. There's a new jazz festival happening elsewhere, and the core of this is really use of you can call it Internet of Things and ICT technologies to be able to both support infrastructure services within the city, and simultaneously to be able to support governance and social aspects of the city.
Now, in that regard, Africa has experienced the highest urban growth in the last 2 decades at a rate of 3.5%. The World Bank is projecting this to continue up till the year 2050. Is this sustainable? Is there cause for alarm here?
I think there is cause for alarm. The rate is high, but the rate in itself is really not a problem. The problem is the nature of that urbanization. Africa is the least urbanized anyway, so we expect it to actually move faster. But on the other hand, who are these people who are creating the urban push and the urban drive? Who are they actually? A lot of these people who are moving from rural areas who are not properly skilled, who then cannot be absorbed within the urban system. And the urban system itself is not properly, you don't have good planning, you don't have good housing, you don't have good jobs. So the people come in just to load the urban system. And aside then the transport system.
Areas have not been planned to receive these people. In fact, in Africa, we don't even know whom they are. Some researchers do, like myself, but a lot of countries have no idea who are these people getting to urban areas. What skills do they have? What do they need? How do we then prepare as government? But having said that, urbanization is still a very good thing from a sustainability perspective. Yeah, because I'll give a very basic example. I mean, if you look at Nairobi occupies 0.1% of Kenya's landmass. 0.1% actually. and contributes to 70% of Kenya's GDP. So I was just musing that if we are two Nairobis, we'll only need to use 99.8% of Kenya's landmass to actually produce double what Kenya is producing currently.
Right.
Then the rest we can actually, lease to everybody and let wildlife proceed and so on. So urbanization is a good thing. The only problem is that the way it's happening in Africa, it is not properly managed, and as such is becoming a burden.
So let's talk about that
Right.
then, because like you mentioned,
I don't understand. What does it mean, 99% what he said? I couldn't get it. He said 0.1% Kenya Brogma. 0.1% actually. Okay.
And contributes to 70% of Kenya's land. Nairobi occupies 0.1% of Kenya's landmass. 0.1%.
Landmass.
And contributes...
Landmass. Landmass. Landmass.
Oh, landmass.
0.1% of landmass is
Actually,
Nairobi.
out of total their land. But capital?
Yeah, just Nairobi, the area of Nairobi city is just counts for
70%
yeah.
Kenya's GDP. So it's just
Kenya's what? DP?
GDP.
Or GDP?
musing that if we are two Nairobis, we'll only need to
0.1% landmass and 70% GDP contribution. Nairobi. Okay.
use 99.8% of Kenya's landmass to actually produce double what Kenya is producing currently.
Right.
Then the rest we can actually, lease to everybody and let wildlife proceed and so on. So urbanization is a good thing. The only problem is that the way it's happening in Africa, it is not properly managed, and as such is becoming a burden.
so let's talk about that
Right.
then, because like you mentioned, it leads to the growth of slums and urban poverty and so forth and so on.
Right.
So what really is the solution?
We actually do have a solution, and I think part of the problem that we have is, I would say, insincere politics, poor governance, and terrible policies. The starting point, of course, is planning. But if you look at the way we plan our cities today in Africa, all over the place, Johannesburg, Lagos. In fact, I've just written a paper on Eco Atlantic and on Konza City in Kenya that are meant to be smart cities. You find that these cities assume middle class and high income people. But immediately you establish the city, the first people who arrive there are the unskilled and semi-skilled laborers. We need to start planning about people, not just about things. It's important to plan about things like roads, like water, like electricity. But we need to shift that plan to say, yes, who are these people? We need to plan for the poor. We need to plan for women. We need to plan for youth. We need to plan for the jobless. And we also need to look at urban economics, also not just about things. We must start asking ourselves, what sort of jobs are our urban areas creating? Are they relevant to the people who live in the urban area? For example, if I went to an informal settlement in Kenya today, and I was able to create some small street vending bits, locals, SMEs and stuff like that, I'm likely to absorb a lot of people in there. But on the other hand, if I go and create, a bank, I'll employ nobody. In fact, now that we're doing digital banking and so on. So I think part of the problem is mismatch between planning and policies and the people, and we are very many, and a number of us are actually quite poor, and we're not accommodated at all within our cities. So this is part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We've got congestion on the roads, congestion
Right.
when you talk about housing, when you talk about sanitation, and especially when
Right.
it comes to garbage. And
Correct.
I'm sure this is an area you're very
Exactly.
familiar with. So what's the role of planning in urban development?
Yes, in fact, I want to highlight two issues around planning. We started seeing a bit of planning happening in our cities in Africa, which is a good thing. But I need to highlight that planning is not about production of plans.
Mm-hmm.
Planning is about implementation of plans. Yes, so one of the first challenges.
he said planning of production plan instead of implementation of plan. What is it?
Not about production of plans.
Mm-hmm.
Planning is about implementation of plans.
What does it mean?
Yeah, as Nelson wrote in the first instruction, the planning is not, shouldn't be for planning itself. The planning, planning is
production
just
time.
all about implementation.
Implementation of plan instead of production of planning time.
Yes, plan shouldn't be plan of planning.
Right. Okay.
Yes. So one of the first challenges that we have is that we don't have plans, or we have very poor plans. And then when we get to planning, which is very, very important, we must start saying, where do people live? Where do they work? Where do we want to dump our garbage? How do we want to manage that garbage process? How do we move people efficiently around the city? All these are planning questions. Planning is what forces us to rationally think about the limited resource that is the urban area and start saying, how do we use this landmass optimally? How do we move people from one part of the city optimally? How do we ensure there's no wastage in production? All those guys stuck in traffic jam is actually a waste to the economy. The billions that we lose every day by just having inefficient transport and so on. And through that, then of course a plan, for example, would say, look here, maybe it's more efficient to move people around the city using a light rail system rather than using matatus, which is the same in Kampala, which is the same in Dar es Salaam. So we need to actually start being serious about planning, and we need to start looking at planning as a mechanism for solving our problems and our issues. We should not look at planning as making of plans.
So in this regard, then, the digital age has ushered in, like you mentioned, just a new era of, urban innovation and entrepreneurship, and cities are using new technologies. I mean, we talked about mobile phones, for instance, to make urban performance more efficient and to enable new modes of coordination, decision-making, and participation. So my question is, isn't there a disconnect, though, between the speed at which Africa is embracing ICT and, say, things like internet penetration?
There is, again, if you look at it, if you look at ICT, and to me that is a tragedy in the continent. That on one hand you actually see that
what is a tragedy?
Again, if you look at it, if you look at ICT, and to me that is a tragedy in the continent. That on one hand you actually see that a lot more people are embracing these particular technologies. But on the other hand, you see that the support for the infrastructure is hardly there. So that there's still parts.
Mismatching. ICT and infrastructure mismatching. It's a tragedy.
This country and parts of many countries of Africa where you just become analog immediately. You arrive in
become analog.
Those places because you don't actually.
You are living, but actually the infrastructure analog, but living in the ICT area is different.
You have proper broadband, that can enable you work real time, communicate real time, and so on.
Or it's not affordable.
Real time communicate with them.
Or it's not affordable at all in the first instance. So you find that yes, in terms of gadgets, the Africans have the gadgets. But in terms of the use of those gadgets, we use them for 5% of the potential. I should be able to use my smartphone for everything. I should be able to use it to navigate traffic. I should be able to use it to know that a pipe is broken somewhere. I should be able to use it to report to the local authority about a crowd that is doing something else elsewhere. I should be able to use it to check my accounts. With the county government, and vice versa. The county government should be able to use those same smart technologies to figure out who's paying taxes, to figure out land users in different parts of town, to do all these sort of things. So again, we're totally underutilizing this. We policymakers are thinking Konza City, they're thinking Eco-Atlantic. They're thinking Pearl City, Ghana. They're thinking about huge mega urban areas that are smart. But in fact, smart cities can be applied to anything, to any urban formation, because it helps improve the efficiencies of these urban areas. So you do not need to actually just have an ICT city for the city to be smart. You can actually start with Nairobi and start asking yourself, what aspects of Nairobi can we start making smart? You can actually start with existing cities and then bring in smart infrastructure, and then of course with the proper ICT penetration and the net, and then where we have gaps in the law or regulation, then we need to put those in place, and then we need to get government to incentivize it, because government must lead from the front, and it can't just be one city that is started with. It must be incremental effort in all the cities, because at the end of the day, what we're talking about is about urban efficiency, and what we're talking about is about urban productivity, so that we can deal with these issues of poor cities in the continent and poor citizens within the continent.
Great insights, Professor. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We are here in studio Professor Alfred Ome.
Last part is, he said, even if there are advanced technology implemented, but the people will not catch up with it.
Principal researcher at EcoBuild Africa. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll have more insights into the emergence of smart cities in Africa. Stay with us.
これ本の表紙に使いたかった。でも、半径がもう心配だったから。
Welcome back to Talk Africa. Now, as we heard earlier, Rwanda hosted the third edition of Transform Africa, a summit that brings together different players from across Africa and the globe to fast-track the continent's digital transformation agenda. It aimed to establish new ways of shaping, accelerating, and sustaining Africa's ongoing digital revolution. And on the sidelines of the event, I sat down with some of the delegates to find out how they plan to achieve this. Joining us to discuss the idea of smart cities further is, on my extreme left, Enrique Molgad, the Vice President of Global Sales Bluetown. And next to him is Peter Wallet, the Program Coordinator at UNESCO. And right next to me is Pierre Kayitana, Acting Chief Operating Officer at Rwanda Online Limited. Thank you, all of you, for joining us today. Pierre, I'm going to start with you because Kigali is the host city for Transforming Africa Summit. And break it down for us, the idea of smart cities. What exactly is it?
Yes, the concept started back in the years about 10, 12 years ago when we were discussing Connect Africa here in Kigali at the Kigali Serena Hotel. That was the very first ICT conference for Africa taking place in Kigali. So at the time, the issue was about infrastructure. There were no enough infrastructure to host, to develop ICT in Africa. Then when we came back in 2013 for Transform Africa, we noticed that Africa is now connected, so it's about transforming the lives of people. And transforming the lives of people, it's making them smart by having smart infrastructure, smart schools, smart citizens, smart services, and all the...
His definition is different. This is smart city is just grid, connection for electricity, right? But he said smart city, smart service means more broader definition of what she's talking about, right?
Is hosted in a city makes what we call the concept of smart city. Our Minister of ICT Rwanda presented the blueprint of smart African cities, and this is an important document that will define basically the model of what it means to be an African smart city.
Right. Peter, how does UNESCO tie in with this idea of smart cities?
Well, UNESCO is focusing, one of its main projects here in the country of Rwanda is infusing ICTs into education to transform Africa. So I think it sort of fits in, is that UNESCO recognizes the priority of the government of Rwanda in using ICTs to enhance education in the primary and secondary and tertiary education systems. So UNESCO is trying to leverage and build capacity at many levels, training teachers to use ICTs in the classroom, so enhancing the skills, but also using ICTs to also enhance teaching and learning itself in the classroom. Also in terms of, it's important to build capacity in the universities in bringing traditional instruction online, as that is a government priority in terms of bringing about open and distance education learning. And the third main thing that UNESCO is involved with is helping policymakers and learn about knowledge societies. And I think this is really this is where it ties into smart cities, and there's that obvious link. So, but UNESCO's role essentially is about
this place is their smart city definition is different from official definition, right? More kind of smart city they define smart city means ICT oriented kind of city.
Reinforcing the education system, enhancing ICTs to help students and citizens in general sort of acquire those skills and for 21st century skills for the future.
Henrik, why is Global Sales Bluetown very keen on this idea?
Basically, in Bluetown, we are a global technology company, and we are focusing on connectivity in rural areas based on Wi-Fi. And you cannot have a smart city without connectivity, and that is basically our stronghold. We are also very focused about supporting the SDGs, and many of those SDGs are about education and equality of gender and equality of rights. And we believe that with infrastructure and ability also comes better life. And this is one of the ways that we think we can support this initiative.
Right. So I'm hearing a lot of connectivity, education as well from UNESCO. And when you look at the capital cities in Africa, there's a myriad of problems. There's poor housing, lack of water, electricity, and a lot more, of course, without enough solutions, a lot of people would say. So we're looking at technology to create these solutions. Pierre, is this the silver bullet? How do we achieve this using the idea of smart cities?
Using the idea of smart city means that we can have many other society problems, but we can be behind on a number of things. But with technology, we have equal opportunities. What in technology we call leapfrogging. We might be behind on a number of things, but with technology we can still be ahead of other countries. Last time in Transform Africa was the launch of the first 4G on mobile in Rwanda, ahead of many developed countries in the world, even ahead of some European countries and in other continents. Same thing with technology. We don't have to wait so long to create smart cities in Africa and wait that will resolve a number of problems. Some of the pain points, for example, the company I'm working for, Rwanda Online, we're trying to resolve is citizens are walking long distance to go and apply for services at different government agencies. Now we have put up different platforms via mobile or online where they can apply for services and pay for them online and even receive them online. So the citizens are becoming smarter, ahead of many other big cities in the world, and we can actually sell the concept of smart city to the rest of the world right from here.
Peter, coming to you, you talked about UNESCO and the purpose to build or create a knowledgeable public. And of course, the beauty about Africa is a majority of people have mobile networks, which have internet, of course. But then how does education tie in with technology when we talk about solving some of these challenges we're encountering?
Well, I think the fact that mobile phones have become so readily available and the property of so many people is something that needs to be tapped, because and this is part of what UNESCO is trying to accomplish in Rwanda with its capacity building, is we are considering mobile phones as an instrument, something that can be used to disseminate information for communication reasons, and another tool amongst many to enhance the educational system in a way. So, I mean, clearly, I always want to be careful that ICTs are again, they're a tool that can be used in the education system by teachers, by learners. They are by no means a solution to everything. We know that traditional education, well-designed instruction.
She's talking about just the ICT tool, and so teachers need to be the skill to influence how to use this tool.
Good teaching, well-trained teachers, these things really, really matter. And these things will always remain at the core of good quality education. However, of course, with the changes in Rwanda is ahead of the curve in terms of the adoption of ICT, internet, and compared to many other countries in the region. So it is something that ought to be tapped and ought to be, for lack of a better word, exploited to enhance the possibilities in the education system that teachers and learners can take advantage of.
So taking it forward, Pierre, we're talking about enhancing capacity. But what are the challenges that you foresee to make smart cities a reality?
Smart cities is, we still have an issue on infrastructure, but the Rwandan government has invested a lot in infrastructure. So the part remaining now is education and awareness. Although all these platforms are being deployed, all this infrastructure are being invested in, citizens still need to be educated and be aware that they exist and that they can make their lives easier. So the most part is to also invest in that daily training and daily follow-up with people, and that's also requires a lot of time and investment. For example, with what we do, we have tried to simplify application for government services online for everyone. However, you still find people still need someone who can help them do it for them. So we had to create and deploy a network of agents who support the citizen as they apply for different services. Although some of the services are already made very in a way that is improved, so that they don't need internet, they just need a basic mobile phone and apply via USSD on their own mobile phone. But we need to employ thousands of agents to be deployed across the country, supporting them through the application process. The other thing is the cost, the cost of digitization and the cost of delivering service, and also the cost of internet and other services that citizen needs to be able to embrace the concept of smart cities. For some of them still feel that the service providers are still very expensive for the market, and through dialogue and partnerships, these costs are relatively coming down as we move.
Peter, let me draw your attention to something that the former Executive Secretary of the UN Economic Commission for Africa, Abdoulaye Diané, once said, that many of the African countries devote considerable lower funding to homegrown innovations. So a lot of African governments preferring foreign innovations as opposed to local innovations. UNESCO works very closely with African governments. Do you think there's enough political goodwill to actualize the idea of smart cities?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think UNESCO is partnering in particular with the Ministry of Education, of course, and also by default the Rwanda Education Board. The industry needs to be further developed, of course, but the will is there, and what I'm not witnessing is a reliance necessarily on foreign knowledge, foreign technology. I see a pragmatic approach, and UNESCO supports the building of the capacity of the sectors themselves. So that idea is sort of inconsistent with UNESCO's vision of development of ICT within the sector of education.
Hendrik, where do you see the role of the private sector?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I think actually the role of the private sector will be very important, I hope, and I believe so as well. What I was thinking about earlier also is the importance of for-profit initiatives in smart cities and also in general in this global megatrend of connecting the world. I think there's a bad experience about this, not NGO, but non-profit projects. I seem to hear that when the funding flows out, the project dies. So I would very much recommend that governments and other super over country bodies like UN are focusing a little bit more on the for-profit organizations, and that's mainly the private sector. That's my belief.
Final question to you, Pierre. Rwanda has been one of those African countries known to embrace ICT, and I want to know if we have good examples of homegrown innovations that have created solutions along the concepts of smart cities here in Rwanda.
Yes, indeed. Our president is a digital president. His Excellency President Paul Kagame has really, not only for Rwanda but for his counterpart in Africa, been discussing how African countries can really embrace technology in improving the lives of people. And back in Rwanda, they have different initiatives that have been embraced by the population in general. Rwanda Online, Irembo is a very good example on how citizens in Kigali and in Rwanda are very smart, applying and paying online. The mobile financial sector is also growing. One of the fastest growing mobile financial services are here. This is not a solution that was created in Rwanda, but actually being used in Rwanda and showing a lot of growth potential. And then I will say that in Kigali there are different initiatives. There's innovation in the transport, there's innovation in service delivery, and there's innovation in public Wi-Fi and making sure that everything goes online, and it's all done in the spirit of making sure that there's citizen satisfaction and also improving the service delivery that is offered to the citizen.
All right. We're going to leave it there for now. Thank you very much for joining us. From my extreme left, Hendrik Mulgard, Vice President of Global Sales, Bluetown. Next to him, Peter Wallet, the Program Coordinator of UNESCO. And next to me, Pierre Kayitana, the Chief Operating Officer, Acting Rwanda Online Limited.
Smart city.
For this concept of smart city, sometimes funded by foreign countries and mainly implemented by local initiative, to for this idea to come more on the successful case. Actually, what I have been trying to do with my local partner and the other partner in other countries is this concept. I also want to be involved in this kind of the concept of the Japanese company.
You're talking of Vietnam?
One is Vietnam, and also the other countries in ASEAN. The local government in ASEAN also wants to make this concept happen. Smart city. So in this concept, what the local government is expecting the donor countries such as Japan or the other foreign countries is not simply to provide the system and technology, but they are expecting us to work along toward this the actual implementation of the smart city idea. So what our side have to consider is not how much we can sell our product and solution, but also how much additional generate, how much the profit we could generate together with local government, local authority through this idea of smart city. And the point for this concept to be sustainable is how we can make the good business model to share the profit between the local initiative and the private sector, as someone's mentioned in the interview. Because no, the government initiative only cannot help making this happen. They need the private, there's some resources from private sector. So the point is not buy and sell, but also to share the revenue, which will be additionally generated from the concept of smart city.
But must be careful for local people, and not only authority, local people. How advantage can they get? Right? Because the local government, local authorities, they also need to consider local people's satisfaction, right? So, and also this video is just talking about precisely not talking about smart city. They are talking about the ICT revolution, right? Different definition. I just showed you smart city. Smart city definition different. Right? This is smart city.
Yeah. Then even in this interview, the sitting on the left side from the local government, the how they're addressing to the smart city are different from each other. The sent one from UNESCO.
First guy. Yeah.
The first guy is from local authority. He wants to make revolution, ICT revolution, by using by encouraging the people to embrace the mobile phone, the mobile payment. But the UNESCO wants to more focus on the education and some government officer and also the children. The education is must do some items to start. You have to start fast. And the last one is purely private company who wants to sell their services, ICT services. He wants, his idea of the smart city is all about the connectivity of some transaction happen in the city through their gateway managed by their database or host server. So it's still, the discussion is not coming on the same page.
Okay. That's right. Okay, this is actually the talk, the discussion. I think we can do more and more. Arab Spring didn't trigger the different aspects. The Arab Spring, also referred to as Arab revolutions, was a revolutionary wave of both violent and non-violent demonstrations protests, riots, coups, and civil wars in North Africa and Middle East that began on 17 December 2010. In Tunisia, with the Tunisian Revolution. The Tunisian Revolution effects spread strongly to 5 other countries, Libya, Egypt, Yemen, Syria, and Bahrain, where either the regime was toppled or major uprisings and social violence occurred, including civil wars or insurgencies. Sustained street demonstrations took place in Morocco, Iraq, Algeria, Iranian Kyrgyzstan, Lebanon, Jordan, Kuwait, Oman, and Sudan. Minor protests occurred in Djibouti, Mauritania, the Palestinian National Authority, Saudi Arabia, and the Moroccan-controlled Western Sahara. A major slogan of the demonstrators is the Arab world is the people want to bring down the regime. The wave of initial revolutions and protests faded by mid-2012 as many Arab Spring demonstrations were met with violent responses from authorities as well as from pro-government militias and counter-demonstrators. These attacks were answered with violence from protesters in some cases. Large-scale conflict resulted. The Syrian civil war, Iraq insurgency, and the following civil war, the Egyptian crisis and coup, and Libyan civil war, and the Yemeni crisis and following civil war. A power struggle continued after the immediate response to the Arab Spring, while leadership changed and regimes were held accountable. Power vacuums opened across the Arab world. Ultimately, it came down to a contentious battle between the consolidation of power by religious elites and the growing support for democracy in many Muslim-majority states. The early hopes that this popular movement would end corruption, increase political participation, and bring about greater economic equity. Economic equity, just the comment, quickly collapsed in the wake of the counter-revolutionary moves of the deep state. In Egypt, the regional and international interventions in Bahrain and Yemen, and the destructive civil wars in Syria and Libya. Economic equity. Deep state. This politics conspiracy theory. A large group of people, typically members of government agencies and military, believed to have long-lasting political influence that is different to counter for the administration that was voted in power. 別の組織。別の組織、ディープステート、別の組織。Some have referred to the succeeding and still ongoing conflict as Arab Winter. As of July 2016, only the uprising in Tunisia has resulted in a transition to constitutional democratic governance. Only Tunisia.
Arab Winter is following Arab Spring.
Arab Winter is following Arab Spring. Yes, that's right. As of July 2016, only the uprising in Tunisia has resulted in transition to constitutional democratic governance. Only Tunisia success. The US and EU, in practical terms, are no longer seeking regime change, and its corollary, democracy promotion in Syria, after over 5 years, Arab Spring has not led to a surge in political liberalization that would have increased the government interest in seeking the EU's support for democratic reform. So now we look back at how it all started. Why did the Arab uprising occur after a long period in which authoritarian governments appear to have been successfully consolidating their control? There may be a number of explanations: electoral fraud, succession crisis, economic distress, increasing corruption, and neighborhood effect. An attempt by an authoritarian ruler to extend his rule or ensure that hand-picked successor takes power is a catalyst for protest. Stealing elections have often stimulated opposition. For example, in Egypt, in Egypt or during the CIS 独立国家だったら Commonwealth of Independent States CIS. Okay, and in Egypt or during the CIS color revolution カラーリボリューションはここに書いてある。カラーリボリューション、色革命。Many countries, they have different color. Right? Yeah. Serbia, Georgia, Ukraine, color revolution. Kyrgyz. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. Color revolutions in the middle of the previous decade. Blatant fraud in the parliamentary election in Egypt held in November and December 2010 outraged and helped mobilize protesters, as did Mubarak's plan to install his son Gamal as the country's next ruler. I didn't know the first kicking the Gamal, he tried to succeed his son. That's the original reason. Everybody the same, right? So, color revolution. So, was the Arab Spring bad for Egypt? Okay. Bad for Egypt? Violent protests in Egypt have been ongoing since 2011, when President Hosni Mubarak was overthrown and put on trial. Has the country improved since ousting Mubarak? What's the current state of Egypt? これは、いつのかな？2015. Very short. 3 minutes, 2015. So, before Muslim brothers. Okay. Morsi, yes. 2012年モルシが2013年でクーデターで書いた。だから、退陣する前だね、これ。15年だもん、退陣した後だ。ね。軍のシシが大統領になったの。モルシは経済システム。徹底的に弾圧した。シシはね。言論自由も統制した。2014年ムスリム同胞の500人が死刑判決を受けて、相変わらずエジプトの経済が停滞したままだ。2011年以来、関係来なくなってアメリカはエジプトを支援し続けている。unwarranted deports ちょっと短いからなんかねちょっとねおかしいんだねこれこのままちょっとこれいけるかな
Human Rights Watch has reported that the Egyptian government used unwarranted police force during a 2013 protest that caused an estimated 900 deaths. The organization also notes that poor prison conditions are leading to some prisoner deaths. The question is, what has happened in Egypt since the Arab Spring, and has the country improved since then? First, we should give a quick rundown of Egypt's recent history. As a result of a huge uprising in 2011, President Hosni Mubarak and his oppressive regime were forced to resign. This was after being in power for nearly 30 years. Then in 2012, Mohamed Morsi, with the support of the political group called the Muslim Brotherhood, was elected. However, he was deposed in a 2013 coup d'etat, and Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the current president, took his place in 2014. This was at first welcomed because many people blamed Morsi for the shrinking economy and shortages of electricity and fuel. But since Morsi's outing in 2013, violence and oppression have become increasingly common in Egypt, which is what the human rights groups are currently protesting. The opinion is that President Sisi has appointed those who are close to him to office, while cracking down on his non-supporters, especially the Muslim Brotherhood. They have also been cracking down on freedom of speech and jailing opponents. The Egyptian government notably jailed 3 Al Jazeera reporters in 2013, and in 2014 more than 500 supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood were sentenced to death on charges of murdering a high-ranking policeman. In addition to all of this, the Egyptian economy has also been poor since the revolution. There are some signs of potential recovery now, but in January, Egypt's currency hit a historic low against the US dollar. Tourism, which generates a significant amount of Egypt's GDP, has also fallen, on average, since 2011, and the U.S. Bureau of Consular Affairs recommends that American citizens avoid urban areas after dark. Terrorists in Egypt have also remained a significant concern to the public and the government. According to the Congressional Research Service, the Sinai Peninsula is home to a mix of terrorist cells, including radical Bedouin Arabs, foreign fighters, and Palestinian militants, which target both Egypt and Israel. The most powerful of these groups is called Ansar Beit al-Maqdis, which swore allegiance to ISIS in November of 2014. Needless to say, things in Egypt are bad and may not change anytime soon. The U.S. is still sending military and economic aid to the country, and although the UN is giving the Egyptian government a sort of grace period to work on their democracy, that's not going to last forever. Other countries in the region are facing a very similar power struggle since the Arab Spring. To learn about the situation in Libya, Egypt's next-door neighbor, check out this video now.
Libya is rife with Islamic militant groups, regional militias, and foreign terrorist networks, all of which are fighting for control of different parts of the country.
And be sure to subscribe. We release new videos 6 days a week. Thanks for watching.
Okay, thanks for watching. 非常短い。
Human Rights Watch has...
Okay. What's the next example of democratic intervention? Huh?
Yes.
Huh?
Democratic intervention.
I didn't understand what this means. Okay, アメリカを全員にするとか、アメリカに介入したのか。ああ、OK。アメリカの介入だ。インターベンション。民主主義を中東に導入しようとした。
押し付け。
うん。Intervention, democratic intervention. What happens after the bad regime falls is the American mindset which tends toward mindless optimism. Bad is logically replaced by good. Reality is different. Deposing oppressive regimes sometimes lead to greater oppression. This is an especially painful lesson for well-meaning Americans who believe they can liberate populations by crashing into or tearing apart foreign countries. On one of Obama's trips to Africa, he confronted the failure of his two most ill-conceived humanitarian interventions, those in Libya and Sudan. He understands that dealing with unpleasant regimes rather than fighting them can have long-term benefits. U.S. may not like the Castro government in Cuba or the Mullahs in Iran, but it's wiser to accept them than to seek their overthrow without knowing what comes next. In Cuba and Iran, Obama was trying to repair damage done by past American intervention. In Libya and Sudan, he has inflicted damage that torments him and will torment his successors. U.S. intervened in Libya to save lives, but because there was no substitute for the Gaddafi regime that was deposed, in the end, U.S. intervention killed more than it saved. In South Sudan, U.S. led a humanitarian effort and split the country into the two in an attempt to rid of the brutality of Sudan's leader, Omar al-Bashir. It's now a killing field. 2 million people have lost their homes and are adrift among warring armies. In the Middle East, conflicts are inflamed due to the U.S. meddling in Iraq, Syria, and more. The region is aflame, and U.S. policy bears much of the blame. Washington's relentless attempt to reorder and reshape complex peoples, distant places, and volatile dispute has backfired spectacularly. America has caused manifold problems while proving unable to solve any of them. Okay, this is opinion. Okay, so one more video you have, and Arab Spring false flag. Okay, false flag operation. 第三者になりすまして行われる軍事作戦。例えば、海戦の口実を作るために、アメリカンよくやるやつね。false flag. Arab Spring false flag. From start, Libya ultimate goal all along. ultimate goal. 最初からフェルスフラッグ。要するにアメリカがリビアを貶めるために、リビアのこの実際のこうやってきたのは、もともと軍事教練を受けた連中がデモを始めた。アメリカによって。っていう話だよね、これ。Okay. The wave of Middle East evolution was a false flag from the start, and the ultimate target for the U.S. was indeed Libya all along. Insists Ian R. Klein, conspiracy. His famous conspiracy guy. Independent researcher and campaigner for political truth and integrity. 12 minutes. Ian R. Klein. This I surveyed. British conspiracy theorist, lecturer and writer. So this article is not true and very skeptical. Okay? But this is very impressive. I think this is true. That's the reason I pick up this video, okay? But not common sense. To use Klein's own description, one of the UK's leading authorities in deep geopolitics, where geographic, economic, social, political, and spiritual issues conjoin. で、これはね、このビデオを持ってきたのは、意図的に持ってきたんで、ちょっと常識と違うんだけど、このクレインっていう人はね、どちらかっていうと、コンスピラシーセオリストだね。だから、陰謀説の好きな人だね。でもこれは僕はそうだと思うんだよ。リビアとイラク共同すると。からさ、これイラク、リビアしか借金がないってことは彼らは狙うんです。自国の通貨でビジネス。だから、リビアなんか最も狙われたんだね。豊かだから。ね。アラブの春狙うリビアでシリアではなかった。欧米の狙う石油ではない。リビアは GDP にかける債務しかない。これを1000ドルも払ってた。すべて教育無償でカテビは自部外独裁。彼は大水槽を掘り起こしてはサハラ砂漠の公式化しようとした。オバマ首相の疑惑を回避するため、メディアを引きつける別のテーマが必要だった。それがオサマ・ビンラディン殺害だとオバマの出世は虚偽だった可能性がある。後半アメリカの医師が BP の深海石油問題を、後半違う趣旨で書いてね。フィアモンガリン。これしょっちゅう出てきます。恐怖を利用する。他国の脅威など恐怖を大きに取り上げて、彼らの政策を有利に展開しようとする。フィアモンガリン。 大げさに言ってね。イラクが核爆弾持ってるみたいな。フィアモンガル。unfolding at a rate of knots. I knew it all along. I knew it all along. All along. 最初から。coincidence. tagged. in common. contrived. contrived も時よく出てきますね。contrived. benevolent. overture. overture. これ発音わかんない。アクイフォー。ちょっと待ってね。発音わかんない。アクイフォー。Oh my God, wait a minute. I can't find that here. Aquifer. Aquifer. Okay, aquifer. Allable. Pseudo. Mythology. どっちかな？マイソロジーかな？あれ？いっぱい開いてるね。何これ？mythology. Mythology. Mythology. Not my.
Mythology.
Mythology. Mythology. Construct. Construct. Forgery. Iconic. David Frost. Telecaster. Gem. Spot. Expose. Compound. Beholden. Sinister. しょっちゅう出てくるね。このローク。ジャンクチャー。これよく出てくるね。Antithesis. Antithesis. Incriminate. Overturning. Subpoena. これもよく出てくるね。Displeasant. これは出てこない。Slick. あんまり出ない。これ面白い。なんかね、ちょっとね、調子悪いんだよね、これ。
Ian R. Crane, thank you very much for talking to RT here in Brighton. Now, tell me, what is...
Okay, RT, Russia TV.
Deep geopolitics.
Deep geopolitics is looking at the underlying global agenda. It's an agenda that is multi-generational and outside the bounds of, shall I say, the day-to-day perception that's presented in the mainstream media.
Some people say that what you do is essentially fear-mongering amongst the general population. What's your reaction to that?
People will go through fear as they start to realise what's occurring, and they'll also go through anger. But when they actually get through that and they start to see the bigger picture, then it actually is very empowering to be able to actually understand what's going on and see that bigger picture.
Middle East. We've seen a wave of revolutions across North Africa and the Middle East. you have things that you call false flag events. Do you think that these revolutions also were false flag events?
At this stage of the game, it's very difficult to say. I think that things in the Middle East have been unfolding at a phenomenal rate of knots. What I do perceive, though, is that the ultimate target was indeed Libya all along. Let's just have a look at a couple of things here. On January the 4th of this year, the UN was about to release...
Just happened. Spring, right? Arab Spring.
Release a report which actually was praising Gaddafi as a model leader in the Arab world. And let's just also recognise one remarkable piece of coincidence. All of the countries that are tagged by the mainstream media on behalf of the political elite, all of the countries tagged, such as Venezuela, Cuba, Libya, Iraq, Iran, North Korea, all have one thing in common, or had one thing in common, and that is they are free of debt from the World Bank, that they are not locked into the World Bank and the IMF. They have their own banks, they issue their own currency, and we also have to recognise the remarkable coincidence between Gaddafi's statement that he was going to start issuing gold dinar and demanding that his oil was purchased in gold, and then the next thing we know, of course, then we have a popular uprising. Now, this was brilliant. It was a brilliant strategy, because when Tony Blair and George Bush announced in 2002 that they were planning to launch a regime change event on Iraq, millions of people hit the streets across the Western world. But this time, effectively, the same has or is in process in Libya as was done in Iraq. What would that be? 8 years ago, 2003. And yet this time, because, if you like, the scene was set through other popular uprisings, Libya just seemed to be the next natural part of the process.
And then the next natural part of the process, it seems, is Syria now. The EU has just applied sanctions to Syria. What do you see developing in that situation?
Well, I think actually what's happening elsewhere, particularly in Syria, is deliberately contrived to take the attention away from Libya. The goal is Libya. The goal is control of not just the oil in Libya. Libya's debt was less than 1 month of its GDP. So
he said not oil.
So it was no debt, that was just working capital. But it's not just the oil, because in addition to supporting his
everybody saying oil
country, I mean, let's understand that Gaddafi paid a social wage. Every Libyan of working age received the equivalent of $1,000 a month, and it was up to them whether they worked or not. So Gaddafi was putting money back into the community. All education was free.
All education was free.
Was not in debt to the World Bank. He was.
This is a point.
I'm not suggesting that everything about Gaddafi was wonderful. I think the appropriate term to describe Gaddafi would be a benevolent despot.
Benevolent despot.
But nonetheless, he wouldn't buy in to the overtures of the World Bank. He was also...
Overture. He don't need money from World Bank.
Spending a significant chunk of the oil revenues on developing the massive ancient underground aquifers. And he developed...
Aquifer. He just got aquifer from water. And those water used in Sahara Desert.
Developed an incredible engineering network to take the water from these aquifers and effectively turn the northern Sahara Desert, the Libyan...
Northern Sahara Desert, and green field, he saw that.
Sahara, into arable farmland. This would potentially not only make Libya even more independent, but also enable...
Not only Libya, he tried to make an effort surrounding countries.
It to effectively become a pseudo superpower, within that region.
I have to ask you this
within that region.
Question. I'm listening to you talking. Do you consider yourself to be a conspiracy theorist?
No, I analyse the deep geopolitical agenda. In reality, more and more people are starting to realize that the mythology that is put out by the mainstream media
It's a mythology.
is nothing more than a political construct. And of course, that's been demonstrated literally in the last few days with the sudden manifestation of a certain birth certificate, which when it appeared
Obama.
on the White House website, was immediately identified as being a forgery because it was still in
Forgery. Gizou.
the Photoshop layers. In the event that the media, particularly of course the US media,
He said Obama didn't born in Hawaii.
then needed something of enormous magnitude to take the birth certificate issue off of the front pages. So they decided that they needed to murder Osama bin Laden for what is at least the third time.
That's the reason he tried to kill Osama bin Laden.
And I don't make that observation lightly, because we have people who are very were close to the US administration in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, who have stated that Osama bin Laden was dead before the end of 2001. And then, of course, we have the iconic interview between David Frost and Benazir Bhutto in November of 2007, where Benazir Bhutto stated categorically that Omar Sheikh had murdered Osama bin Laden. And David Frost made no comment whatsoever. He let it go completely unquestioned, despite the fact that this was breaking news, or should have been breaking news. But Benazir Bhutto, of course, unfortunately paid a tragic price for revealing that little gem of information, because 5 weeks after that interview with David Frost, she herself was assassinated.
She assassinated because of what?
You're saying that the
What she was assassinated? Like ratings or something, right? At that time.
Yeah,
Crazy.
her comment is related to something, some part of this previous agenda of Obama and Osama bin Laden.
When did Osama bin Laden killed? 2000. When? Is the same time?
Yeah, then she touched upon some unclear situation.
Oh, she said something.
Yeah.
Okay.
the supposed assassination of Osama bin Laden was in an attempt to cover up the allegations that Obama wasn't born in the United States.
It's certainly having that effect, isn't it? And of course now what's happening is that the story is unraveling. It's unraveling rapidly. The US administration is finding it extremely difficult to stay with a single script, because more and more people are starting to spot holes in the script, and of course as they ask more questions, and it's like any lie, once people are exposed as lying and you probe that lie, then they have to come up with more lies to cover the gaps in the original lie. I mean, we saw this piece of footage that was released that was allegedly Osama bin Laden watching TV in his luxury compound. And I mean, close analysis of that photograph shows that it's nothing like any of the photographs of Osama bin Laden. But I mean, this story has still got some legs. I'm not suggesting that after a few days we know all the facts. What I am suggesting is that people should not be taking the version of events offered by the mainstream media at face value, and we should actually take it as beholden upon all of us to dig as deeply as possible to establish what we believe to be the truth.
It's just over a year since the massive oil spill from BP in the Gulf of Mexico. You suggest that it wasn't, in fact, caused by a technical failure
Oh, this is a different story.
or incompetence in any way, that you think that something deeper and more sinister lurks behind it.
Well,
Sinister look behind it.
and my reason for that belief is that there are some very, very important questions that both BP and the US government have done their utmost to make sure don't get asked. And to be very specific, The Deepwater Horizon at the time had one of BP's most experienced company men on the rig. It was a guy called Ronald Sepulvado. And Sepulvado was taken off the rig, supposedly to attend a course in Lafayette, Louisiana. Now, it's remarkable that BP's most experienced company man should be taken off the rig to learn how to use the BOP at the most significant juncture of the drilling operation, i.e. just as the wells are about to reach completion. The person that was put on the rig to replace Sepulvado was a guy called Bob Kaluza. Now, Bob Kaluza is the complete antithesis of Sepulvado. He was a young guy. He had no deep water drilling experience. His only experience was land drilling. And he was the main man. He was the head honcho on the rig when the disaster occurred.
Why BP would want to deliberately pour oil into the Gulf of Mexico?
I'm not suggesting that the script was actually written by BP. In fact, individuals within BP, unfortunately, are potentially part of, how shall I say, a hidden hierarchy. You know, the questions need to be asked. Who took the decision to put Bob Kaluza on that rig? These are questions that haven't been properly answered by the Gulf Coast hearings. And Bob Kaluza has declined to appear before the Gulf Coast hearing by pleading the Fifth Amendment, i.e. that if he does give evidence, any evidence he gives may likely incriminate him. And people can look this up for themselves and see the YouTube video clip of the United States Senate deliberately overturning the request for the Gulf Coast hearings to be given the power subpoena. Now, if the Gulf Coast hearing had been given the power subpoena, it could have not only demanded that Bob Kaluza actually appear before the hearing, it could have demanded that Bob Kaluza shares what he knows occurred on that rig immediately prior to the blowout.
What could possibly be the reason for essentially deliberately spilling millions of barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico?
What is the purpose of it? I believe that the purpose of this was a population reduction event.
Population reduction event? What do you mean population reduction event?
And we've already seen elements of population reduction in the Gulf Coast area after Katrina. Where many of the black residents of the area have not returned to New Orleans. In some cases, they haven't been permitted to return to New Orleans because there's absolutely nowhere for them to go, because they're not being permitted to return to their former residence.
So what you're suggesting is that government...
Oh, all spirits, so they don't return to the residence. They reduce population. Black people not coming back to home after Katrina. Do you understand what I mean?
Governments and big business are colluding to cull populations. And why would they target the population that lives on the coast of the Gulf of Mexico?
Because basically they want to turn it into a massive oil production arena. The reality is that the effects of that disaster are not being reported and have never been reported really outside of the Gulf Coast region. It's not just the oil and the mix of the dispersant corrects it. And Corexit is extremely toxic. Its toxicity is 10 times that of oil alone. And the reason that Corexit was poured onto the slick was to break up the slick, but also to force it below the surface of the Gulf. Because under federal law, a BP's liability would be related to the size of the visible slick. So if you can remove the visible slick, then you reduce the liability. Now, the other effect that that's having is that it's actually killing the marine life in the Gulf, because it's causing a dead zone. Because as the slick descends, then all life beneath it effectively dies because it's not getting the natural sunlight.
Ian R. Crane, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't understand clearly, but they try to cause this accident because they try to avoid Katrina's. Black people escape from that area because of Katrina storm. So the government don't want black people coming back for those areas, coast area. So they just try to cause this accident. But I don't believe this is true.
I think the Katrina is natural disaster.
Yeah.
After that, the government policy is obviously the one who which doesn't want that people previously living there to come back to that. But this oil accident is the logic is different, as it intends to throw out some toxic material in the sea. Then sea is contaminated, sea is polluted, then the fish and some the seafood is also contaminated, then the people is eating, then they get some disease, then life is going short.
But he is talking about, to try to, the reason is they don't want the black people coming back to their original house. So that's the reason why they caused this accident. They said.
I think the Katrina and this oil spill accident is different.
No. This is okay. At Katrina, the black people escaped from that area, but the government don't want them back to the original location.
And then they're using that case as
just look
example.
it again.
Drilling experience. His only experience was land drilling, and he was the main man. He was the head honcho on the rig when the disaster occurred.
Why BP would want to deliberately pour oil into the Gulf of Mexico?
I'm not suggesting that the script was actually written by BP. In fact, individuals within BP, unfortunately, are potentially part of, how shall I say, a hidden hierarchy. The questions need to be asked. Who took the decision to put Bob Kaluza on that rig? These are questions that haven't been properly answered by the Gulf Coast hearings. And Bob Kaluza has declined to appear before the Gulf Coast hearing by pleading the Fifth Amendment, i.e. that if he does give evidence, any evidence he gives may likely incriminate him. And people can look this up for themselves and see the YouTube video clip of the United States Senate deliberately overturning the request for the Gulf Coast hearings to be given the power of subpoena. Now, if the Gulf Coast hearing had been given the power of subpoena, it could have not only demanded that Bob Kaluza actually appear before the hearing, it could have demanded that Bob Kaluza shares what he knows occurred on that rig immediately prior to the blowout.
What could possibly be the reason for essentially deliberately spilling millions of barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico?
What is the purpose of it? I believe that the purpose of this was a population reduction event. And we've already
population reduction event.
Seen elements of population reduction in the Gulf Coast area after
I don't know why they try to reduce population in Gulf Coast.
Katrina, when
after Katrina they seen good opportunity.
Okay.
You understand? Okay.
Many of the black residents of the area have not returned to New Orleans. In some cases, they haven't been permitted to return to New Orleans because there's absolutely nowhere for them to go, because they're not being permitted to return to their former residence.
So what you're suggesting is that governments and big business are colluding to cull populations. And why would they target the population that lives on the coast of the Gulf of Mexico?
Because basically they want to turn it into a massive oil production arena. The reality is that the effects of that disaster are not being reported, and they've never been reported.
戻らずにその海岸 沿いにいて、でそこに直接やっちゃうとあまりにもわざとらしいので、メキシコの方でその有毒なやつを流してこうその沿岸沿いに影響を与えようとしたと。
あ、そうだ、そう言ってる。そう言ってるの。
BP、事故を起こした BP のその掘削の作業をする人は随分その経験の浅い。
ああ、そうそうそう。
で、一応やらなきゃいけない BP の責任はそのこう流出したオイルを回収するなんですけど、それ以上にその見えない有毒なものがこうそのまま流出していると。
ただここで彼言ってるのは僕はちょっと全般のリビアの正しいと思うけど、ここのやつはどうもちょっと怪しいな。Okay, this is actually she's David Frost, no David Frost. This is Crane, young Crane. It was very interesting for Libya. Maybe Libya's story is maybe true. And then they have this is another very interesting Engdahl, Arab Spring, a Western ploy to control Eurasia. 策略。これはクレインと違ってね、この人のエングダールはまともな人なんですよ。で、これは今回のアラブスプリングはアメリカの策略。これはまともな人なんです。ヤンクレイは陰謀家で嘘っぽいけど、これはまともです。この人。で、これはまあ来週ですな。来週で。あとまたアフリカの全般まだまだ続く。ということですね。OK?